The storm had already turned violent by the time I arrived at my parents' house with my 8-year-old daughter. Lily, don't miss out on the journey, subscribe and let's grow, laugh, and learn together. Rain crashed against the windows, thunder shook the walls, and the entire place felt colder than I remembered. Lily stayed close to me all evening, clutching her stuffed rabbit while my parents criticized everything she did, the way she talked, the way she ate, even the way she looked at them. My father called her too weak, and my mother suggested boarding school like Lily was some problem that needed to be fixed. I kept my composure because military training teaches you how to stay calm under pressure, but inside, I was seconds away from exploding. Late that night, I woke to the sound of Lily crying. Her side of the bed was empty. The bedroom door was locked from the outside, the window was wide open, and freezing rain poured into the room. Then I heard my father downstairs saying, "Maybe now she'll toughen up." I rushed to the window and my heart stopped. My little girl was outside alone in the middle of the storm, barefoot in the mud near the dark woods behind the house. I don't remember unlocking the door. 1 second I was staring out that window, and the next I was slamming my shoulder into the wood hard enough to crack the frame. Years of military training erase hesitation. Your body moves before your mind catches up. I tore downstairs while my mother shouted something behind me, but I ignored her. The front door burst open under my hand, and freezing rain hit me like ice. Lily was still out there, shaking violently near the tree line, her tiny arms wrapped around herself while thunder rolled above her head. The mud swallowed my boots as I sprinted across the yard. "Lily!" I yelled. She turned at the sound of my voice, crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Daddy," that one word nearly broke me. I dropped to my knees in the mud, pulled her into my chest, and felt how cold her body had become. Her feet were covered in cuts from gravel and broken branches. She was terrified. Absolutely terrified. I took off my jacket instantly and wrapped her inside it while scanning the woods and surroundings out of pure instinct. Secure the child. Assess danger. Extract immediately. That training never leaves you. But this wasn't combat. This was worse. Because the threat wasn't a stranger. It was my own family. I carried Lily back toward the house while she clung to my neck with frozen hands. Before I could reach the porch, the front door opened. My father stood there completely calm, like throwing an 8-year-old into a thunderstorm was normal discipline. "Put her down," he said coldly. "She needs to learn." I stopped walking. Rain poured down my face while Lily trembled against my chest. "You locked my daughter outside," I said quietly. My father crossed his arms. "And? Kids today are weak because parents baby them. You were tougher at her age." My mother appeared behind him with a blanket in her hands, but she wasn't concerned. She looked annoyed. "You're overreacting again," she snapped. It was only for a few minutes. Lily buried her face into my shoulder the moment she heard my mother's voice. That told me everything I needed to know. Fear like that doesn't appear instantly. It builds over time. Slowly. Quietly. My mind started replaying every moment from the past few years. Every time Lily begged not to visit them. Every stomach ache before holidays. Every nervous silence around my parents. And suddenly I realized something that made me sick. This wasn't the first time they'd hurt her. It was only the first time I caught them. I stepped onto the porch, dripping wet, and looked directly at my father. "Move." He didn't. "Not until you calm down." The old military instincts inside me sharpened instantly. His posture. His jaw. The challenge in his eyes. He thought intimidation still worked on me because it did when I was 16. But I wasn't 16 anymore. I had survived war zones, hostage extractions, and nights that still woke me up at 3 a.m. shaking with sweat. Nothing about him scared me now. "Last warning," I said. My voice stayed calm, which somehow frightened him more. He hesitated for half a second before stepping aside. I carried Lily upstairs, locked the guest room door behind us, and wrapped her in blankets after turning the shower as warm as she could handle. She sat silently while I cleaned mud and blood from her tiny feet. Then, very quietly, she whispered, "Grandpa said Mommy died because she was weak too." Everything inside me stopped. My wife had died from cancer 2 years earlier. Lily adored her mother. She still slept with one of her scarves every night because it smelled like her shampoo. I stared at my daughter, trying to control the rage building in my chest. When did he say that? I asked carefully. Lily looked scared to answer. A lot. I closed my eyes for a second. My father hadn't just crossed a line. He had destroyed it completely. I tucked Lily into bed and waited until she finally fell asleep before standing up again. Then I walked downstairs. Slowly. Calmly. My parents were sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee like nothing happened. My father didn't even look up when I entered. "She alive?" he muttered. That sentence nearly made me black out. I placed Lily's muddy shoe on the table between us. "You're going to explain," I said quietly, "why my daughter is terrified of both of you." My mother rolled her eyes. "Oh please. Kids are dramatic. She said you blame her mother's death on weakness." Silence. My father finally looked at me. "No guilt. No shame. Nothing. Your wife filled her head with softness," he replied. "And now you're raising another weak little." The chair slammed backward before he could finish. In 2 steps I had him pinned against the wall by his shirt collar. His coffee crashed onto the floor while my mother screamed. Years of combat training made controlling another human body terrifyingly easy. My father's eyes widened because for the first time in his life, he realized I was no longer his son in that moment. I was a soldier protecting his child. "Listen carefully," I whispered. "You will never speak about my wife or my daughter again." He tried to shove me back, but age had slowed him down. "You think you scare me," he spat. I leaned closer. "No. I think prison will." That finally changed his expression. My mother immediately stepped between us. "Prison? Are you insane?" I released him slowly and reached into my pocket for my phone. Then I pressed play on the audio recording that had started automatically when I ran downstairs earlier. My father's voice filled the kitchen clearly. "She'll learn to stop being weak." Then Lily crying outside in the storm. My mother went pale instantly. My father stared at the phone in disbelief. "You recorded us," he snapped. "No," I replied coldly. "You exposed yourselves." For the first time that night, panic appeared in their eyes. And they had no idea that wasn't even the worst part yet. By sunrise, our bags were packed and Lily was asleep in the backseat of my truck, wrapped safely in blankets. My parents stood on the porch watching me load the last bag, suddenly desperate to explain themselves now that they understood what they could lose. But I said nothing. I simply handed my father a copy of the restraining order paperwork my lawyer had prepared years ago after the first warning signs I ignored. His hands shook when he realized I was serious. Then I looked at both of them one final time and said, "You didn't lose me because I'm angry. You lost us because my daughter deserves to feel safe." And with that, I drove away while they stood there in silence, finally understanding that access to family is not a right, it's earned.